You've found Wickett on Wisconsin, your one-stop podcast for all things Packers, Brewers, Bucks, and the rest of your favorite teams from all over the state of Wisconsin. We're powered by Wisconsin Sports Heroics, online at wisportsheroics.com and the Wisconsin Podcast Association. And now, here's your host, Mike Wickett.
All right, well, that was a much better effort than what we saw, the week before here. Welcome into the podcast. Had to get this one in here because there is so much coming out of that win over the Chicago Bears that I have to talk about. It was on my mind. I didn't want this to wait till the middle of the week like I usually do because there was so much that came out of that game that made me feel positive. Now, every week it seems to be there's got to be a caveat of some kind, right? Well, I think we have another caveat because we have to say it was the Bears. And that Bears team might win a few more games, but that Bears team ain't great. That Bears team is not going to be gunning for the NFC North title. That Bears team, despite what happened in week 1 in that monsoon in Chicago, that Bears team's not looking at a 8, 9, 10-win season. That's not a playoff team. But it was a necessary win over a bad team and the effort I think Packers fans were looking for, right? Because let's just say things went awry, and at Lambeau Field, the Bears came in and won. I think we would all be very worried about this Packers team if they were unable to move the ball, if they were unable to pass protect, if they weren't running, if they weren't throwing, if they weren't able to stop anybody. I would have been very, very worried. Am I certain of my Super Bowl prediction after a win like that over Chicago? No. But it's a step in the right direction because the entire season is always a process in the NFL. I think you know that. You think, and if you've listened to me, you know that I realize, or I will 100% get behind the notion that things take time in the NFL. Like look at Denver right now. Getting off the Packers here for just a second. Denver's 1-1. They lost that game with first-year head coach Nathaniel Hackett in week 1. When he made the boneheaded decision to not give the ball to Russell Wilson on a 4th and 5 and kick a 64-yard field goal in Seattle on the road. Missed. They lost. He got crushed. And in my mind, I was like, well, it was a mistake. He'll learn first game. And even Nathaniel Hackett said, if I could have that back, I would. That was a dumb mistake. Well, at least Hackett knows, At least he knows he made the mistake. And then you look at the offense. It didn't look great in week 1 for the Broncos. You look at the offense in week 2. Didn't look great. They got a win, but they had penalties. They didn't get any points in the red zone. Like that's still very much a work in progress that I think most people believe by the time we get to Halloween will look better. I believe it'll look better. I believe with Russell Wilson and Cortland Sutton, although Judy got a little hurt in that one. I don't know what his shoulder situation is. They already lost Tim Patrick. They've got the 2 running backs in there. But I still believe that in the coming weeks, Denver will look better offensively. They got Russell Wilson. They have to look better offensively, I think. Just like I believe that the Packers' passing attack will look better by the time we get to Halloween. Heck, there was a drastic improvement in the Packers' passing attack from week 1 to week 2. That wasn't even the story of the game. The story of the game was their ability to run the football, which that's where I want to start. I have said ever since the departure of Davante Adams, while people have been screaming doom and gloom, that this is finally going to be the LaFleur offense where we see the ball on the ground a lot, mixed in with the pass, less hero ball, less snap, I got to run around and look for who's running their routes. I just wish it didn't take a catastrophic effort against Minnesota in week 1 for us to see this. Now, they're not perfect. No, there's still a lot of work to go, or a long way to go. Still a lot of work to be done. But what we saw last night, what we saw against the Bears, is what I personally have been yelling for weeks and months, saying this is the LaFleur offense we're going to see. And they've got to utilize those running backs because there's so many questions about the wide receivers. And they did last night. Shout out to Matt LaFleur for checking out my podcast. I appreciate that. I'm sure that's what it was. I'm sure it was the only guy saying 8 touches. 8 touches. How is that possible? How is 8 touches all Aaron Jones is going to get? Why are you putting Aaron Rodgers back there to throw the ball with a banged-up offensive line? Your 2 starting tackles are out, young wide receivers, unproven guys they've never played games with outside of Randall Cobb. What are we doing here? So in week 2, you know what we saw? We saw veterans get used more in the passing game, and we saw an emphasis on running the ball. Aaron Jones, 15 carries, 132 yards, and a touchdown. Also caught 3 passes from Rodgers for 38 yards. That's 19 touches. Check that. That's 18 touches for 170 yards and 2 scores. And the offense looked really good. It looked well-rounded. It looked balanced. Most of the time it looked in sync. You know, it's strange. After the first touchdown by Jones, you know, the Packers kicked the field goal, and then Chicago came back down, and they scored a touchdown, and you're like, oh, God, here we go. Maybe this is going to be more of a struggle early than we thought. And then Green Bay took control of the football game. But they drive down the field. It's a run mix pass. It was beautiful. It was Jones. It was Dillon. It was Rodgers here. It was a throw to Sammy. It was a throw to Cobb. It was a throw to the guys in the backfield. It was running the football. And they scored a touchdown. They ate up clock. They moved down the field. The next drive, right after that amazing drive that they had where they mixed it up and the offense looked like what you want it to look like, motion, guys going this way, guys going that way, using running backs out of the backfield. You know what they did? Drop back, drop back, drop back. Pass, 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 punt. Because the offensive line couldn't pass protect for Rodgers. Or Rodgers couldn't find anybody to get open. Or, God forbid, Chicago played good defense. You know, we often forget, we criticize Matt LaFleur or Joe Barry or, you know, what. We often forget that the other teams out there try to play too. Chicago is trying to tell the world, no, we're not going to roll over for Green Bay. That's not going to happen. But that was the only drive in the whole game. That was it. Where I was like, man, that doesn't make any sense to me. Why did I just watch that happen with this football team? That was the only drive of the whole game. Other than that, I love the game plan. Did it work all the time? No. Sometimes it worked better. Sometimes the offensive line didn't block for Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. But you see what happens when they commit to it. And there was one touchdown score by Jones on a run. When I think Tirico and Collinsworth were saying, you look at Aaron Rodgers pointing over to Matt LaFleur like, that's yours. Like, yes, that's what I have been dying to see. The problem is, I think the arrogance and the ego of Aaron Rodgers, who is the greatest thrower of the football the earth has ever seen. I think he knows how great he is and how great his resume looks. But not buying into what LaFleur is selling, and that is running the ball and keeping it on the ground. And Rodgers doesn't have to throw 42 times in a game. I mean, he was 19 of 25. He threw 25 passes, probably had, 7 or 8 other dropbacks where he either got sacked or took off or whatever, maybe 6. But 25 passes for Aaron Rodgers. That's the number. I love that number. And I know people want to see Rodgers throw. If you got Rodgers on your fantasy team or whatever. The Packers ran 66 plays. They had 414 total yards in this game. They ran the ball for 203 yards on 38 carries. I love that. 38 carries versus 25 pass attempts, throwing a couple where Rodgers got sacked or whatever, and it was, say, 38-30. That was amazing. I mean, that's what you want to see. In my mind, that's what you want to see. You had 15 carries for Jones, 18 carries for A.J. Dillon. You know, they try to reverse with Watson. Rodgers had the one scamper up the right side. Aaron doesn't move like he used to, but he can still pick up a couple of yards. But it was great to see, and I beg Matt LaFleur, and I beg Aaron Rodgers, as the wide receivers are figuring this out. There were more mental errors out of Doubs and out of Watson, and that's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but it's okay. But there were more mental errors out of the young guys. They utilized Sammy Watkins, and they utilized Randall Cobb, and they utilized the older dudes a little more, but they leaned on the running game. And I know it's Chicago. That's the caveat. It's Chicago, it's Chicago, it's Chicago, it's Chicago, and Chicago sucks. And you're right, Chicago does suck. Do it against Tampa next week. We'll talk more about Tampa coming up. But I was so happy to see it, and I loved it. And they still were able to score 26 points in this football game. And they dominated Chicago after their first drive. Defensively, we'll get to that in a second. But on offense, it was great to see the Packers run the ball with effectiveness, with Aaron Jones, who it feels like Aaron Jones is an underrated running back. Now, you list off the great running backs in the NFL. I wonder how often people get to Aaron Jones before they're in, spot 10, 11, 12, whatever. I don't think Aaron Jones is built for 25 carries a game. A.J. Dillon is, and the two of them are totally built for 30 carries a game. I'd love to see that. That's what I want to see. And we saw it last night. And it was great. But I hope it continues. I'll get to the passing game here in a second, because there's a lot to talk about with the passing game that we saw yesterday too. It was a great sign of hopefully what is to come. If you can do me a favor, if you are a small business owner, a medium-sized business owner, listen up. This is for you, okay? If you are looking to market yourself on the internet, on the interwebs, on the information superhighway, and you're like, how do I do that? Or I'm not doing it well enough, you got to call my guy Nick Packard. All right, nickpackard.com. He's in Franklin. He's a Green Bay football fan just like you. And his company, NP Direct, it's the marketing agency redefined. Again, online, nickpackard.com. What's your SEO? That's your search engine optimization, meaning when someone types in, anything, toy cars, is your company the first one that comes up? Or you type in beer mugs. Is yours the first one that comes up? That's what he can do. He can help you optimize the search engine, all the nerdy Google button stuff that I don't know anything about, but he's the guy. So when you say, hey, Siri, where can I find beer mugs by me? Boom, your business comes up. Your small business, your medium-sized business comes up. He's going to help you, all right? And he's going to manage your project from start to finish. He wants to help you succeed by making sure your company is the one that is seen by people on the internet looking for stuff, all right? Plus, he's a fractional guy, all right? You're only paying for the time that you need, all right? They've got these packages for big budgets, medium budgets, small budgets, whatever it is. If you're looking to help your marketing department, maybe you don't like what you're doing, make a change. nickpackard.com, nickpackard.com. Plus, Nick is giving everybody who listens to this podcast a free digital ecosystem assessment. That way you can find out how well your website's doing, your social's doing, your email marketing. Maybe it's not hitting the right inboxes. Sign up on his website, nickpackard.com. Tell him Wickett sent you. All right, so I've already gushed over the running game, right? Well, I want to tell you about the passing game. All right, let's talk about the passing game. Aaron Rodgers, 19-25 for 234 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's now 24-5 against the Bears. And I don't think quarterback wins losses. I don't like that stat very much, but that stat's all over. He's 24-5 against the Chicago Bears. That's ridiculous. It's insane. Touchdown pass number 450 and 451. Only 5 guys have thrown for 450 passing yards. A guy named Brady, a guy named Breeze, Peyton Manning, and a guy named Favre. That's the end of the list. By the way, he has yet to throw 100 interceptions. I think he's at 94. I think I saw Rob Domofsky tweet that out yesterday. That's unbelievable. What we saw yesterday is what you expected, or at least what we saw yesterday is what I expected out of the Packers offense. Aaron Rodgers completed passes to 8 different guys, all right? 8 different players caught balls from Aaron Rodgers. A.J. Dillon caught a pass. Christian Watson caught 3. Robert Tonyan caught 2. Alan Lazard had 2. Romeo Doubs had 2. He hit Cobby 3 times. Aaron Jones caught 3 balls. And Sammy Watkins caught 3 for 93, including that long 55-yarder over the middle. I think if healthy Sammy can be around, and I've joked about it on the podcast. You've joked about it with your friends. Every Packers fan is asking the same question. Can Sammy Watkins stay healthy? We're all asking the same thing. Well, 2 games in, we've now seen healthy Sammy Watkins. And in Game 2, unlike Game 1, Game 1, you know how I feel about it. If you don't know how I feel about Game 1, go back and listen to last week's podcast. It's Game 1. It's basically an extra preseason game. But Sammy Watkins, in Game 2, exploiting weaknesses in that secondary. Veteran stuff. He seems, we only see Alan Lazard back for 1 game, but it feels like between Lazard and Cobb and Watkins, the guys that I thought would be Green Bay's 1, 2, 3 going into camp and into week 1, it seems like that's the answer right now. Aaron is taking his chances a little bit with Doubs, and he's taking his chances a little bit with Watson. But in no way, shape, or form here in mid-September is Aaron Rodgers looking to Watson and looking to Romeo Doubs as his first look right now, other than that 75-yard pass, which no one will ever let Christian Watson live down, okay? But the fact that he was able to hit those three older veteran wide receivers, he's looking for Tunyon. I mean, this was a very balanced passing attack. That's what you want to see, because now when things begin to improve, and they will improve, once he becomes more comfortable with Watkins, and once Watkins and Lazard and Cobb and everybody becomes more comfortable with Aaron Rodgers in their new roles, the offense is going to get better, all right? The passing offense is going to get better. There is no doubt in my mind that this offense will be fine through the air. Is it going to be explosive, top 2? No, I don't think so. Could be wrong. But it's going to be just fine. Top 10. Top 10 passing offense when we get there. We're not there yet. We will. Like I said in the last podcast, call me on Halloween. If the offense looks as bad as it did in week 1, we got some problems. But all of this passing talk is predicated on one thing. If Elton Jenkins can improve pass blocking, and if David Bakhtiari can get back on the left side, because as much as I like Nyman, he's no David Bakhtiari. And I don't know if we're ever going to see David Bakhtiari. It feels like, and they joked about this, well, joking's the wrong word. They mentioned this, but Collinsworth said it lightheartedly, that it feels like Packers fans have been hearing that David Bakhtiari is a week or two away for 6 months. And it's true. Like, you probably have. It's like, when is this going to happen? You see the doom and gloom tweets that come in. It's all about, it's season's over, career's over. He's never going to be right. I don't know if he's ever going to be right. I'll tell you what I trust. Doctors, trainers, Bakhtiari himself, much more than I do, Cheesehead25 on Twitter. It's just the way, I'm not a doctor. I never scoped a knee. I've never gone inside a knee and tried to figure out, okay, where do I attach? No, that's not for me. I talk on a microphone for a living. That's what I do. But Elton Jenkins, who in his first game back struggled against the pass block, or struggled as a pass blocker, did pretty darn well moving people around as a run blocker. If he can get his feet back, they'll be fine on the right side. If Bakhtiari is back, and maybe he's not back for another 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, I don't have any idea. But if Bakhtiari gets back to 80% of what he was, passing game's going to get even better. Because there were a lot of times last night when Rodgers dropped back and that pocket just collapsed. And whether it was the right side or the left side or the interior, there were a lot of problems pass blocking, which is something that Rodgers didn't have to worry about for the last 2 years when he was out there winning the MVP. I mean, he had the best offensive line in football the last 2 seasons. Guys moving on, guys departed, guys got hurt. And that sucks. But the ability of Rodgers to spread the ball around. So now, as opposed to when you have the great Davante Adams there getting Rodgers' eye 80% of the time, 90% of the time in pre-snap, you're seeing it. Watkins 3, Cobb 3, Jones 3 out of the backfield, Doubs 2, Lazard, Tunyon, Watson, Dillon. He even threw, a ball to Tyler Davis, which is strange. There's some other names you're like, where's Winfrey? Where's Toure? Where's DeGuara? They'll all get used. They'll all get utilized. The Packers did what they had to do yesterday to win and win convincingly. They didn't win 45-2, or I thought it was going to be 42-10, but they did enough to convince me that things are moving in the right direction. And that's all you want. That's what you want on offense when you're breaking in so many new guys and watching your MVP quarterback try to build trust with new pieces. I mean, the only guy he's got any experience really with, well, I guess 2, Cobb and Lazard. And Cobb's on this end of the spectrum as age, and Lazard's on this end of the spectrum as being the man. Cobby was an integral part of this offense when he was here the first time around. Scored over 50 touchdowns in his NFL career, most of those with Green Bay. Meanwhile, Lazard had his first touchdown of the year yesterday. And then he did the tea pouring thing, and that was a ayahuasca celebration. I thought that was hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. So I think the passing game is moving along. I hope we see a ratio like we did last night between run and pass with Green Bay, with Jones and Dillon, and then all those guys I mentioned catching balls from Rodgers, because that's the offense that's going to win. When teams aren't doubling your one guy, and you're still looking at that one guy, that's the offense that's going to win. And that's what Green Bay is going to have to do. Get to the defense here in a second. You know the old phrase. It came back this summer. I feel the need for speed. It became mainstream again because of that Top Gun movie. My friends at Great Lakes Dragaway in Union Grove, Wisconsin want to see you if you need that speed. It's the fastest quarter mile in the Midwest. If you're a gearhead, you love to drive. Maybe just like sitting back, watching cars fly down the track. Go over to Great Lakes Dragaway. Online, greatlakesdragaway.com. They've got nights for bikes, for hot rods, for trucks, for nitrous rides. GreatLakesDragaway.com has the whole thing. Plus, my guy, the Gravedigger, Gilbert Brown, is going to be there this Saturday on the 24th. You can meet the Super Bowl champion, Gravedigger. That's right. Gilbert Brown's going to be there. Make sure you say hello. And they are open until the snow flies. So I'm recording this as fall begins in 3 days. But until that snow flies, Great Lakes Dragaway is still open. You can even rent out the track, GreatLakesDragaway.com. And don't forget about this, too. Once the snow flies and we get into late fall and winter, it's going to be closed, but it will open next spring. And there's a gearhead on your Christmas list. If there's a gearhead on your Christmas list, gift cards from Great Lakes Dragaway are a great idea. GreatLakesDragaway.com. Tell them Wickett sent you, okay? Shout out to my guy Roy over there doing a wonderful job at Great Lakes Dragaway. Been a business partner and a friend of Roy's for over a decade. All right, so defensively, again, it's the Bears. And I know there were people on social media crushing Green Bay when Justin Fields and company went down after the Packers opened the game with a field goal. And it was like, oh, boy. And I felt the same way. I'm like, wait. Montgomery's just going to plow right through, and Fields can do whatever he wants. Equanimous St. Brown had a big catch on the left side to start the game. You're like, what the heck is happening here? But it was the next 3 drives. After they gave up 76 yards in the touchdown, the next 3 drives, 10 total yards. 3 straight 3-and-outs, and the dominance was on. That swagger looked like it came back, whether it was Kenny Clark pushing up the middle, Jair coming up with a big pick later on in this football game. Rashawn Gary is a monster. And I'll tell you what, I was worried about this year's Preston Smith, because if you are familiar with Preston Smith's career, generally he follows up a real good year, like he had in 2021, with a bad year, which has happened for his entire career. Up, down, up, down. So far, off to a good start, led the Packers with 6 pressures in this football game of Justin Fields. Defense took them about a half to wake up last week against Minnesota. And this is important because I feel like this happened a lot last year, where the first drive of a lot of games for the opposition raised an eyebrow. And you're like, whoa, especially with the scrutiny that Joe Barry was under last year. Last week, it took an entire half for this team to wake up. Because if you remember, as bad as they looked against Minnesota in the first half, they only gave up 3 points in the second half. Well, in this game, as bad as they looked in that first drive, they looked great for the next 2.5 quarters. There's some questions about their ability to stop the run, and perhaps the Bears laid a blueprint for some teams, especially with the big old back they're going to have to face this weekend when they take on Tampa Bay. But that defense, whatever they didn't do right in the first drive, they corrected, dominated, and crushed Fields. They did a really good job of bottling up Montgomery, of putting pressure on Fields, of collapsing the pocket. And Chicago's got a bad offensive line. I think we all know that. They took advantage of that situation. There was never really a doubt, even when the questionable non-touchdown was called, and I don't think it was, but some people have an angle where they've drawn the ball into the end zone. You know, you can do that now. Even when that was going on, and they might have been able to cut it to a close game, never really worried. I figured the defense would come up with plays and would be just fine. It seems like Joe Barry and his zone scheme versus Jair, who was very unhappy after the Minnesota game, who wants to play man and wants to shadow the best wide receiver on the other team. From everything you've read this week, it sounds like they're back on the same page, which is good, which is important. That's what you need, and maybe we're going to see more of a mix like we did yesterday of some zone and some man. I mean, you got Rasul Douglas out there making big plays in the slot. He has solidified himself as a really good number 3 or slot corner, just making plays, bringing guys down. Sure-handed tackling, which is what you want to see. Between Douglas and Stokes and Jair, I mean, there's not a better 1-2-3 secondary or defensive back trio in the National Football League. Haven't seen a ton out of Adrian Amos. He's had his flashes so far in the first 2 games, but I'm not worried about that dude, and we'll see what happens with Darnell Savage. Defensively, this weekend, they get Tampa, but I don't know what to make of this Tampa team. You know, Mike Evans, if you have not heard, Mike Evans is out for this one. He's been suspended 1 game for the fight that he got into in the New Orleans game. Chris Godwin probably won't play in this football game. Julio Jones missed the last game for all those that wanted Julio, like me. He's already banged up, so he may not play in this one. So you may have to deal with Scotty Miller and Brashad Perriman, maybe Russell Gage. I don't know these wide receivers if they're going to have any sort of impact on Green Bay. I mean, when I bring up Scotty Miller's name, I'm sure you think of the NFC Championship game when it looked like they were just going to, kick. And what happened? Tom Brady said, no, we can burn Kevin King with Scotty Miller. And he did. Remember that? That's Scotty Miller. Yeah, that's Scotty Miller. The way they handled David Montgomery, little scary, that first drive. Montgomery down the field, plowing through Packers defenders. Montgomery late. Khalil Herbert, both had really good games yesterday. David Montgomery, 15 carries for $122. Also had 2 more catches for 14 yards. So 17 touches for 136 yards. That's Leonard Fournette, man. Fournette's a big dude just like Montgomery. Herbert had 4 carries for 38 yards. As a team, they rushed for 180 on the Green Bay defense. That might be the blueprint that I was talking about earlier, that other teams may look at and say, this is how we're going to, slow down Rodgers in the offense, or this is how we're going to grind Green Bay out. That power running game. And that's going to be incumbent on Green Bay up the middle to be able to slow down, whoever running back they're facing. Whether it was Montgomery yesterday, and they failed for the beginning and the end, but the middle they did fine. And Fournette when they go down to Tampa. And you remember what happened the last time they went down to Tampa. Remember Aaron Rodgers threw back-to-back interceptions? One of them was a pick 6, and the route was on. Like, this game was over at halftime. The final score was like 38-10 or something along those lines. It was horrible. It was a mistake-filled game. Green Bay wasn't ready, and that Tampa aggressive defense took full advantage. And that is what scares me when we go back to talking about the offensive line. Shaq Barrett, Levante David, Antoine Winfield in the secondary. Like, this is a team loaded with defensive players. I mean, they are the reason that Tampa Bay beat New Orleans yesterday in Week 2. It wasn't Brady. They turned Jameis Winston over 3 times, sacked him 5 times. One of the turnovers, one of the picks, they took to the house. So Tampa's defense is absolutely 100% legit. And Green Bay's offensive line has looked average protecting for Aaron Rodgers. It's been good blocking on the ground for Jones and for Dillon, and I hope they rely on that, because I'm going to close with the same point that I was making at the beginning, and I saw the offense from Matt LaFleur that I want to see all year, and I saw it against Chicago, and I hope we get to see it again when they play against Tampa coming up here in Week 3. All right, that is my Week 2 wrap-up. That was my thoughts after the win, looking ahead a little bit to Week number 3. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast. Please like, rate, subscribe, all the things so I can grow the podcast. I would appreciate it. Tell a Packers fan that you know about Wickett on Wisconsin and where they can find it on Apple or Google or Spotify or wherever you may be listening to this podcast, because I definitely appreciate that. We will do it again coming up. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, and for everything, wisportsheroics.com. My name is Mike Wickett. This has been Wickett on Wisconsin. Until next time, as always, go Pack, go Bucks, and go Brewers.